Most of us were never taught how to deal with conflict, not at home, not in school, and definitely not at work. But what do you do when things keep bubbling under the surface? When you're biting your tongue, carrying stress, or dreading that one person on the team who just grinds your gears? What if conflict could help create deeper relationships, better leadership, and more connected teams? Whether you're working the shop floor or sitting in the boardroom, tension shows up, and how we deal with it can either build trust or quietly break it. This is Healthy Conflict, the podcast where we stop treating conflict like a problem to avoid and start treating it like an opportunity for greater success. Because the best leaders, the ones people actually want to work with, aren't the ones who shut conflict down. They're the ones who get good at tough conversations. This isn't just about being a better communicator. It's about building cultures where people want to stay, grow, and give their best. I'm Rainey Martin, and I help entrepreneurs, leaders, and teams improve their bottom line by building workplaces that people love and customers never forget. I can be found at coachrainey.com.
And I'm Rasha Shaheen, and I help visionary leaders step out of the daily firefighting and into their zone of genius. And I can be found in LinkedIn. You can find me, Rasha Shaheen. And Rainey, I'm really excited about today's conversation. Um, it's something that I've been thinking about, and really we're talking about, like, how you deal with difficult people without losing your head. Um, and yeah, I'm sure we all have experiences, but you
Yeah,
know,
maybe let's go ahead. Sorry.
no, go for it.
I was thinking just maybe let's start by talking about what difficult means, right? What does it mean to have a difficult person, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Beautiful. And my response to that is it's your reaction, isn't it? Like when something is difficult, it's because you're reacting to it. There's something inside you that jars, and you don't even feel it or understand why. You just know, every time I see them, like I feel the weight.
yeah.
And um and and what we do know is that, like, you probably can't control what other people do, but you can control how you respond.
Yes, that's absolutely true. It's so funny, Rasha, because when I said, let's talk about what makes someone difficult, of course, I was thinking, oh, it's people that ignore boundaries or people that dominate space or drain energy or provoke people or don't, aren't accountable, which is a pet peeve of mine, right? Or
Yeah.
they're like indirectly sabotaging or creating drama.
Yeah.
But you flipped it on its end. And you're like, well, it's really about us, which is of course so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a bit of both, of course. It's a bit of both. Of course, like, that there are people who kind of like don't respect your boundaries. They don't emotionally regulate themselves. They're not aware of emotional contagion. They just, they're in their own world, and they kind of come with a mood that they just spread. Those are just some examples. They don't put themselves in other people's shoes. That's a pet peeve of mine, like
Mm,
where when you're not considerate. But the question is like, okay, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that? Whatever they do, and it jars you, how do you deal with that? And yeah, like, I love that you asked what how do you define difficult? What makes someone difficult? Um but it's, people aren't born difficult, they become difficult, because our values are different, the way they work, their pace is different, their communication styles are different. And so it's, there's a kind of a cultural context as well, like, we can't, sometimes pinpoint what it is. We just know that we feel that it doesn't, there's something not right here. And it might not necessarily be wrong, it might be wrong, but how do we deal with that?
right, right, right. Because what is it that's making them difficult? And like you said, it's often a misalignment, right? A misalignment in values, or communication styles, or
Yeah.
even, I guess what I was going to say really still comes back to values. I mean, so
Yeah.
often it's someone that it, we feel like someone is violating our values when it
Yeah.
comes down to it. When if you
Yeah.
really look at what's going on and what's triggering you, very very often that's at the root of it. Is you
Yeah.
just have different values. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And yeah, go on. And I want to like, okay, let me hear what you were going to say. Let me hear what you're going to say before I answer, because I was going to go somewhere and probably jump to a conclusion, but go for it.
I was just gonna start talking about what it looks like, you know, when you're a leader and you have that person
Mm,
in the midst, and what happens to you, right? Like, I know from my own experience, you start feeling anxious before meetings, you start preparing everything you're going to say and do with that person in mind, instead
mm,
of just preparing in an appropriate way, the way that you should and would for the group. You're
yeah.
really focused on how that person's going to react, right? And then, like, the toxicity that happens, right? The gossip or eye rolling after an interaction with that person. Not that you're doing that, but that's happening, right?
Yeah.
And the fact is, team morale is really impacted. Again, kind of like we talked about last time, like, just that toxicity starts sort of insidiously making its way through the culture,
Yeah.
and this negative energy
Yeah.
starts being a part of every facet of the culture.
Yeah. And there's two ways of looking at this, because you mentioned like the leader's responsibility, and like, let's just say you're a team member, but
Mhm,
either way, like when I think about like when I've had a kind of a clash with people, looking back, it's because I didn't have language. I didn't know myself. I didn't know what my values were. There was some kind of hidden power dynamic, if the truth be spoken. Like, I'm caring about what this person thinks a little bit too much, you know? And or because they have this power over me, consciously or subconsciously, and it's because I don't know how to define boundaries. I don't know how to define my boundaries. I don't know myself. I think that a lot of the times when you really do, you know get to know yourself, get to know what your boundaries are, and and then you can kind of communicate with this person, like, um I'm trying to think, like, there's one person who just always comes with a drama. It's always kind of like they're like their experience is heightened, and it's like, one thing I would have, like, looking back, I would have now said something like, I'd love to have this conversation with you and solve this problem, but can we do it when you're a bit calmer, please?
mhm,
you
mhm,
know
mhm,
because what I really don't like is feeling the feeling that they're feeling, because they're coming in with this emotion, and I'm
mm,
kind of now feeling it and feeling all tense, and you can't think straight, and it's just like I don't have power over my emotions when this overcharged person is coming into my space. But I didn't,
mhm.
without knowing that, without understanding that, I just know that this person is difficult and I don't like it and I want to keep away from them.
I think these are great, great points, Rasha, and I think especially kind of what the the new insight that you're bringing up is this idea that we don't know ourselves well enough to create appropriate boundaries.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I think we often talk about, well, we don't know the language. We don't know how to do it in a way that's professional and that's appropriate, whatever words we want to attach to it.
Yeah.
Constructive,
Yeah.
diplomatic, right? Um, healthy.
Mm.
But this idea that you're bringing up is really interesting. That even before not knowing the language, we don't actually know ourselves. So we get in turmoil about it, right?
Yeah.
We find this person, we find ourselves reacting in a certain way to someone, and we don't know why. We don't know. We just find that they're difficult. They're triggering us over
Yeah.
and over and over again, which makes us, of course, not able to think clearly, which is part of why we don't have the language,
Yeah.
because we're in this place of turmoil, because we're not clear on our own values. We're not clear on on what's happening, what boundaries they're crossing.
100%, 100%. We haven't given ourselves, and I've been playing with this word a lot as well, permission. We haven't given ourselves permission
Mhm.
to have a calm space, to recognize that work doesn't have to be hard, like, or, like actually I can do better work when I'm in a clear and calm kind of, mind. And actually then someone coming in with this aggressive tone, whatever, and just going, actually, no. I don't want that. Um and you're not being confrontational when you say no. You're providing a different solution, like let's have this conversation at a different time. But it's like respecting yourself and giving yourself that permission, allowing yourself to say no, you know?
Right, but also
It's
maybe doing it in a way that is respecting both, right? Because
yeah,
they're also coming from,
yeah,
they're triggered, they're in turmoil, right?
yeah.
Or else they wouldn't be behaving in these ways. And so, language like, let's take a pause. I want to come back to this
Yeah.
in a good way. So let's take a moment so that we can have clearer heads and come back to this from a better space.
Spot on, spot on. And we're going back to kind of when we originally talked about healthy conflict, and it's about, building trust, and having that trust. Like it doesn't, like you just said, it doesn't have to be aggressive. If I kind of provided my boundaries, that doesn't have to be in an aggressive way. It could be in a really calm way, in an
Hmm.
empathetic way, you know?
Assertive, right? Assertive
Assertive
rather
and
than aggressive.
empathic. Yeah,
Mhm. Mhm,
yeah.
exactly.
Do-
Exactly. Yeah. 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 Yeah, it's like another one, it's okay to disagree, but
yeah,
let's do it in a way that doesn't wear the team down,
yeah.
right?
I want to go back to kind of, like, this idea of like being part of the team or the leader, because emotional intelligence now is a key skill, I believe, for all leaders to have. And it's only when you have that emotional intelligence, when you kind of get to know yourself, when you understand that language, that you can create the space for everybody else to work in kind of productively and happily, healthily and happily, you know? So it is the leader's kind of role now to sense when someone is kind of being difficult to others, and to have that, to have a conversation and kind of create the boundaries for everyone.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to piggyback on what you were saying about how, this is about leaders, but it's also about participants, right? We all have a responsibility to the culture. We are all part of creating the culture. And we can either just be a passive participant who's waiting for the leader to fix everything,
Mm.
or we can take on an active role of helping create the culture that we want to be in. And
Yeah.
we can do that by diffusing, by all these same behaviors we can take on as participants. We don't have to be the acknowledged leader to take on these roles, right? We
Yeah.
all have a responsibility to the culture.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. And I think this is the conversation that is going to ripple through this year, this decade. Emotional intelligence is going to be something that, you know, is going to spread.
It
But
makes all the difference. It makes all the
yeah.
difference in leadership, in culture, in communication, both in the workplace and outside the workplace.
And so going back to the question, dealing with a difficult person, I think the way that you deal with a difficult person without losing your head is you getting to know yourself, getting to know your boundaries, getting grounded, and not like, I like this kind of idea of imagining that you're a seaweed. because you're rooted in the ground, and like when the waves, or the current comes through, you're kind of like, you're just flowing fluidly, but you're always solidly grounding. It doesn't frazzle you. And that happens when you get to know yourself, and you get to kind of um, respect yourself in a in a weird way. It is about respecting yourself, that you're allowed to stay calm and grounded, and you can just give yourself that permission. And weirdly enough, then you don't take on other people's stuff, and then it doesn't affect you, and then they're not difficult. You get to see through them, and you just deal with the problem like you deal with any problem, and you
Hmm.
learn how to calm them down because of your groundedness, and that resolves it
Hmm.
for everyone.
Right. So, I mean, I would go back to something we often talk about here, right? PQing it up, right?
Yeah.
Getting into your place of sage. So, and
Hmm.
how do we do that? We do that with PQ reps, or for in ordinary language, we do meditation, or we do activities that put us back into that deep place where we're connected to our deeper selves, right? So we're in nature, we focus on the senses, right? Like rubbing our fingertips together, our thumb and fingertips together, just to bring us into the present. There's lots of
Hmm.
ways, and um, it's easy to find PQ reps on Google, or anywhere, or on our websites.
Can we just say that, just like, there's one simple thing, what does being present mean? What does all of this mean? Like, if you just take
Mhm.
3 slow breaths, just doing that, that is a form of regulating your nervous system, grounding you. That is a form of being in the present, because you're noticing your breath, you're noticing what is happening now. And when you notice what is happening now, being in the present, when you notice what is happening now, you can't, you can't be in that same space of worrying, or anxiety, or any of these difficult emotions. Being in the present just allows that. So just one out of many techniques that are out there is 3 small slow breaths.
Yeah,
And then,
absolutely.
you know and I love that you can also kind of then say, um if you're just before you speak to someone, I choose presence over panic. You can say that to yourself, obviously. And just that intention then kind of creates a shield where you don't soak up the other person's energy.
Hmm. Hmm. I choose presence over panic. I love that. It's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And and also, the idea that boundaries protect your energy, and actually boundaries are healthy for everyone all around, right?
Yeah.
And so when you get into that place, when you're able to PQ it up, and get into that centered place, you operate from that place, and then conflict becomes naturally becomes healthy. You say the things um that are wise to say, because you know what they are. You
Yeah.
naturally know what they are.
Can we like there's a 3-step kind of like a simple structure. So we've talked about regulating. So number one is regulating, where you get to regulate your nervous system. You take 3 slow breaths. Like you said, like we said, just I choose presence over panic. So you're regulating yourself, you're calming yourself down. The other one, the next step is reframe, so making sure that, just saying to yourself, assuming that this person's behavior is not personal, it's a pattern. And when you recognize that it's not personal, it might, you then don't take it personally. You can address it in a different way. You can ask yourself, what's the unmet need underneath their behavior? And
Mhm,
then
mhm,
you're not reactive. So that just helps, in terms of how you communicate. So that's number
mhm,
two, reframing the situation. And then number three, you can respond with clarity. Again, you talked about the boundary. You set a boundary, or you offer a clear response. and you call out the impact without blame. So it's that communication without judgment.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep.
Clarity is kindness. We've always said that.
Yeah, great three-step process. Regulate, reframe, and respond clearly. And
Yeah,
always with empathy, right?
yeah,
We talk about that a lot. Like in each of these, or especially in the reframe, right? It's about being being in that space of empathy where you can hear the other
yeah,
person even though they're triggering you. you
yeah,
you you put yourself in a place where you can hear what's going on behind this behavior that's triggering you. Why is this person feeling the need to behave in these ways?
yeah,
I think, yeah, like for instance, there was a founder who once shared how a team member was the most draining person they'd ever worked with, and after one particularly bad interaction, she was ready to fire the person, and but then she was able to pause and ask, what do you actually need that you're not getting? I mean, I'm sure she phrased it in a different way, but that was the core message. And the response was, "I never know where I stand. I don't feel
mm,
seen." And
mm.
what a mind blow that was, right? And the founder suddenly realized that there was so much more going on here than just how the founder was feeling in reaction to this person, right? She said, I never thought to ask that. I was so busy defending myself from their energy. I forgot to lead."
I love that so much. And it just goes back to this idea again when you try to get calm, you think clearly, you ask better questions. And instead of like losing someone and firing someone, actually, she got some good feedback that she was able to tweak and just calm everything down.
Yeah.
Get more productive.
And use the conflict to end up probably in a deeper relationship with that person, end up
Yeah,
knowing how to lead her team better because
yeah,
clearly there was something she was doing that was contributing to
yeah,
this person not feeling like they knew where they stood.
yeah,
So in the end, it was a ton of great information for the founder and an opportunity.
yeah,
And so again, I mean, it just brings us back again to what we're always talking about, which is that conflict is an invitation. Conflict is an opportunity for deeper connection, deeper effectiveness, um, deeper growth.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Brilliant. And one of the main takeaways, from this conversation from me is that like actually all of this work starts with yourself.
Right, right. It's not about fixing other people. It's about recognizing your own values and then creating clear boundaries around them and then making sure that you're in the right space to be your best self.
Yeah, yeah,
So good questions for our listeners, right? Who's draining you the most right now? And
yeah.
what could shift if you responded from a place of calm instead of a place of control?
Love it. And yeah, and where could clarity be the most loving move? I love that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So really, I mean, just to wrap up now, I mean, like we've been saying this, I love how this actually works with every single episode. Conflict doesn't mean something's wrong, it means something matters. And when you learn how to handle it well, everybody wins, your team, your business, and your own well-being. So, to end, stay steady, stay human. This is where real leadership begins, and see you next time.
Thanks so much.